What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. My name's Shalise if you're new here, and I am officially back with another season of Cocktails and Convos. Yes, y'all, I did Cocktails and Convos for the Real Housewives of Potomac, and I am kicking off Cocktails and Convos for the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Now, yes, I know I am tardy for the party, y'all, but if you've been keeping up with my channel, you know that we are moving to Italy, and I wasn't really planning on doing Cocktails and Convos for this season, but since we're still here, yes y'all, we still here, this whole process is delayed, I figured I'd go ahead and do Cocktails and Convo for the season of Real Housewives of Atlanta. So without any further hold up, let's jump into it. I have already caught up and watched the first 3 episodes, so I am up to speed and ready to delve into tonight's episode. For my cocktail this evening, I made my Berry Bubbly cocktail, which is a vodka and sparkling wine cocktail. So if you're interested in that, I will be showing you all that, but let's dive into tonight's episode. So the episode kicks off with Kenya working with Monyetta, I think that's how, forgive me for mispronouncing her name, but Kenya's working with Monyetta to prepare for an upcoming performance she's going to be doing down in Alabama. She's going to be performing a part of like the HBCU bowl down there, which I find it very interesting, seeing that like Kenya's not like a performer. Like, she's a legendary pageant queen, entrepreneur. We know she has Kenya more hair care, an actress, but performing, like dancing and singing, like I've never known that to be Kenya's thing. So, and apparently at BravoCon she performed, and we all saw how that went. So she reached out to Monyetta, who is a dancer, and asked her to help to prepare for this performance. So that's where we kicked off the episode. And while they were meeting, Kenya's boo called her, and Kenya also shared with Monyetta that she invited all the ladies down to Alabama, which of course we know that's going to be rather interesting, because outside of Candy and Monyetta, it just seems like Kenya doesn't really like mess with any of the other ladies in the group. And I mean, which makes sense, because I feel like with the exception of Candy and Monyetta, she's had issues and beefs and tensions and stuff with all the ladies. So yeah, of course, they're gonna make it interesting and juicy for us. So once we leave that scene, we head over to Sonya's scene, where she is discussing and having a conversation with her mom and sister. And Sonya shares with her mom and sister that her husband Ross is ready for them to get back to a household where it's Ross, Sonya, and their son. And basically like, I'm ready for your family to leave. So her sister kind of takes it personal. The mom is like, oh, don't take it personal. But her sister seems like she's feeling some type of way, which for me was very confusing, being that the sister was basically saying that Sonya is self-centered. And the last episode, the sister was talking about how Sonya doesn't respect boundaries. Like, you know, when I'm cooking for my kids, Sonya will come and, you know, 5 minutes before we're going to sit down and have dinner, Sonya's like, oh, let's go outside. And, you know, Sonya's working my husband, you know, all hours of the night. And so it's just kind of like, I would think that you all getting your own place and moving out of your sister's home would help to establish that boundary, to create some separation and space to where, okay, yes, we're still a part of your team, and we're a part of your staff, but it's not to a point of where you're abusing our help. So I didn't understand why she was like really feeling some type of way. But moving on, after that we jump to Marlo, who is doing her Halloween shoot, and at her shoot Courtney comes through, and it seems like Marlo has a family member. I didn't quite catch who that particular family member was, but they start discussing the argument and the situation that transpired at the performance that Drew had last episode, and just the blow up that Marlo and Drew had. Now, prior to her getting into like the details of the argument, she talks about how like she's trying to turn over a new leaf and work towards getting her record expunged. We all know that Marlo has a criminal history, and the ladies have held that over her head forever. Before she was even a official peach holder and a housewife, they were like throwing shade at her anytime they could about the fact that she's a convicted convict. She's trying to get her record clean, especially now because she wants to, you know, be able to lawfully carry a firearm, but because she has a felony on her record, she can't do so. So she starts starts talking about that process, and she throws a little shade, y'all, at the fact that, you know, Candy is always out here talking about she helping the community, this, that, and the third, but she ain't never helped me get my record clean, which I have been a fan of Marlo since she has been a friend of the show. I've always loved the Marlo Nene dynamic back in the day, but even the seasons when Nene wasn't on the show and it was just Marlo as a friend of the show, I've always loved Marlo. I've always loved the fact that she was very quick and she was willing to go below the belt, and just like, look, you dish it and you come from me, I'm gonna come back at you 10 times harder. And y'all know I love that. I've shared that with y'all with Real Housewives of Potomac. That's why I love my girl Candace. So I've always loved that about Marlo. However, last season and this season, it's starting to feel like you want people to coddle you, and it feels like at times she could be throwing shade towards people, and it's just like, why? Like, why? Like, I didn't understand why she was talking about some Candy never helped me get my record expense. Like, Candy is not like Houdini. She's not a genie in a bottle. Like, Candy cannot just, you know, solve everyone's issues or problems. It's like, girl, like, what are you talking about? That just seems so weird. I tried to give her a pass last season, but this episode I've started to see where people were getting frustrated with Marlo. It's just like, girl, leave it alone. Like, Candy is not, you know, a lawyer. She's not a judge. She's not the president. She cannot pardon you and clean your record. Like, and y'all not even on good terms right now. Like, at the last episode when y'all were at the performance, like, Candy barely said 2 words to you. She said hello and kept it moving. So I don't understand why you expect this woman to go out of her way to help you get your record clean. Weird. But this shade leads into Marlo kind of delving in and sharing the argument that happened between her and Drew last night during the performance. Now, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, when I watched this episode, I was so confused at where this dispute came from between Marlo and Drew. And I'm not even gonna lie, even watching the recent episode tonight, I was still confused at like what was the catalyst of this. I understand that there was a shooting at Candy's restaurant and Marlo was upset that when Drew brought it up, Candy just kind of skirted and didn't want to talk about it, which, to be fair, it makes sense why she doesn't. Her reasonings, I know she said her reasonings are that there's still an active court case and that's why they really can't talk about it. Whether that's true or not, if it is true, it's a valid point. Like, if there's an ongoing case, you don't want to start sharing information and details, especially on a reality TV show. So I can understand where Candy's like, I want to keep hush about it. And also, even if it's not true and she's just coming up with that, it still makes sense on why she doesn't want to talk about it, because it's like, a shooting happening at my restaurant. Like, you don't want that to tarnish your brand and tarnish the way that your business looks. Like, you know, Candy is a businesswoman, so of course it's like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, it's already bad enough that that was in the headlines and the blogs and it involved my cousin. It's like, I don't want to keep talking about this anymore. Like, let's dead it, keep it moving. So I can understand her on a legal aspect and on a business aspect. Like, no, we ain't talking about it. No, I'm done. But Marlo got upset and just felt, here's another time where Candy gets to skirt from talking about something while all of us have to, you know, lay all of our problems out. I feel like Marlo is upset that Candy is not really being her friend this season, and so because Candy's not like, oh, welcome back, Marlo, I'm glad we squashed our beefs, let's be friends now. The fact that Candy's just kind of like, whatever, I'm just like, I'm not even fooling with you, Marlo is like upset about that and she's frustrated. Then she starts sharing like maybe a deeper reason why she's upset with Candy, and the fact that the shooting kind of reminded her of another shooting incident that involved her nephew. So apparently Marlo's nephew worked at Candy's restaurant way back whenever it was. Marlo's nephew was murdered, and allegedly the person who murdered Marlo's nephew was also somebody else who worked at Candy's restaurant. And when her nephew was murdered, she confided or shared this to Candy, and she felt like Candy just kind of was like, oh, you know, I'm sorry, and just brushed her off. And then when her nephew's funeral came around, Candy didn't send any flowers or anything like that. And I could understand why she maybe was upset, especially if at the time her nephew was murdered, if Candy and Marlo were on good terms. I would say, like, I do feel like if it were me and if I was in Candy's shoes, even if like I ain't had nothing to do with it, this person didn't work at my restaurant at the time, like these individuals, like this situation is separate from Candy's restaurant, I probably would still just send something just off the strength of like, look, I really am sorry for your loss. However, the way that Marlo kind of is telling this story, it almost seems like she's trying to connect Candy's restaurant to her nephew's like murdering or killing. And correlation does not mean causation, which means like just because there's some trends going on at Candy's restaurant doesn't necessarily mean that Candy is the cause of it. And I don't know, I just feel like she's just painting it as like Candy is, you know, not doing enough to keep people safe or stop these things. And I feel like, you know, just the current climate right now in this country is just, there's a lot of guns, there's a lot of gun violence. We all know that if you keep up with the news. So, I mean, I feel like Candy could go above and beyond to foster a safe environment in her restaurants, which I'm sure she does. But at the end of the day, like, y'all live in the state of Georgia. Like, Georgia is a pro-gun state, so it's only so much she could do to stop that type of stuff from happening. And again, around the time that Marlo's nephew was murdered, he wasn't working at Candy's restaurant. So again, this is such an isolated situation from Candy's restaurant. And I just feel like it was very Marlo to somehow try to connect Candy and her restaurants to her nephew's murdering. And it just seems like she's just looking for attention and someone to coddle her, which is just, it's unnecessary. We go to Sheree, and she's going to visit her OB because she has fibroids, and she is discussing with her OBGYN her options on how to best treat and manage her fibroids. And I really am loving any shows that women feel comfortable and confident sharing their stories when it comes to fibroids. As I shared when I did Cocktails and Convos for the Real Housewives of Potomac, and Giselle gave us just a little bit of her story and journey with her fibroid situations. I myself am navigating this whole fibroid world myself, and so I like to hear women when they share like the treatments that they're going through in order to manage and care for these things. So I was really happy and excited that Sheree was sharing this, and I'm super happy and fingers crossed that she continues to share this story. So the next scene, we go back to Sonia, and she's having a conversation with her mom and dad, and apparently her brother-in-law quits working for her, which I'm not gonna lie, y'all, I am not shocked by this whatsoever. When she came out like the first or second episode basically saying that her brother-in-law was working for her as an assistant, this did not seem like a good match whatsoever. He did not seem interested. Being her assistant did not align with what he was trying to do. Like, I know she had mentioned he's trying to get into real estate, and so in her mind she thought like, oh, if you work for me, I'm in certain circles and you can network with other people, and that will hopefully propel you into the Atlanta real estate realm. But it just didn't seem like it made sense. It almost would have made more sense if she would have like put him in connection with the people that she thought would possibly help him to get into real estate in Atlanta, rather than have him be your assistant, because he didn't look interested at all. I don't know what they were thinking about, but you know, he quit, and it probably was for the best, because it seems like it is starting to tarnish, or was starting to tarnish, her relationship with her sister. So after that, the ladies all meet up at Sheree's house, and they're heading down to Alabama. Now, if you have been watching the Real Housewives of Atlanta for seasons now, you know that these ladies are infamous for being late. So it did not surprise me that almost everyone, with the exception of Kenya and Sheree, which coincidentally, they were meeting at Sheree's house and this was Kenya's event, everyone else showed up late. So it didn't surprise me. And you know, thank God Kandi didn't come on this trip, because I feel like it is historically known that like Kandi will show up hours late. The ladies showed up late. Kandi and Drew did not come on this trip, and they all head off in their Sprinter bus. So when they first arrived to Alabama, well, back it up. Now, before they arrived in Alabama, the ladies, you know, on the bus, having girl time, talking, and an interesting conversation comes up about eating Mel Bottom, eating Mel Rum Shaker. Sheree shares the tea that Kenya has a history of eating Mel Rum Shaker, y'all. Was not at all in the slightest expecting that tea to be spilled. Like, what? Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's a whole nother Cocktails and Convos, y'all. That's like Cocktails and Convos after dark. Like, we're gonna have to say that for a whole nother episode to get into those you know, freaky details. But you know, to each his own. Whatever you gotta do to spice it up in the bedroom, whatever you like. You do you, Kenya. After that girl Kiki, I thought it was funny. They arrive in Alabama and they go to a dance studio, and I would like to shout out and give a round of applause to all the ladies on this cast, because whatever they are doing to maintain their figures, they're doing a good job. Whether you are lifting weights, running track, or you're getting procedures done, I don't care. I'm not discriminating. All of their bodies look good, y'all. All of them look good. They had a little dance competition, and you could already kind of see the rumblings and the bumping of heads between Kenya and Marlo. Kenya, this is her trip. She has organized everything. This dance studio stop was because of her, and she decides to leave the room with Monyetta and allow the other ladies to continue practicing. They're learning how to buck, and she and Monyetta leave, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna come back and judge the competition. And you can already hear Marlo like, what's going on? Why are they separating? Boop, 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 boop. Which, from outside looking in, it makes sense. Like, it was kind of weird. When they did leave, it almost seemed like Monyetta and Kenya were practicing for Kenya's performance tomorrow. So that made sense. But again, you just kind of already see like the stirring of the pot. They leave the dance studio and they head to lunch. And at lunch, Kenya starts the conversation and kicks off things and basically shares with the ladies that Drew called her up and told her that Marlo and Drew got into a little fight, and Marlo didn't waste no time trying to shut the ish down. She was like, you weren't there, you don't know what was going on, blah blah blah, la la la. And Kenya was basically like, well, Drew told me her side and that there were people with cameras there, so like I have someone to ID. Well, you don't know. And of course Kenya's like, you're being rude, alleging that she's being aggressive. We all know how Kenya does. And Marlo's just like, I'm not being rude. As soon as someone starts calling her out, you can kind of see Marlo pushing that button of like, I'm about to go low and I'm about to start hitting below the belt. And again, as I've shared in Cocktails and Convos when it was the Real Housewives of Potomac, I have no problems whatsoever with anyone going below the belt and hitting below the jugular if it is warranted, if it is necessary. This didn't seem necessary. Like, granted, again, you could assume and call Kenya out like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you weren't there, which is valid. But it's like, look, we're on a girls trip, we're having lunch, like, we just having conversation. Like, why are you bugging like this? Like, chill out. Kenya was wrong. Like, Marlo wasn't standing up over Drew, at least at the beginning of the conversation, but Marlo was definitely aggressive and was bucking in the conversation. So she was not completely off with how Marlo was conducting herself in the conversation. But again, I historically have enjoyed watching Marlo on Real Housewives of Atlanta, but I'm starting to like get to a point where I'm like, okay, I just feel like you are just a bit much. So after they have lunch, Tanya says she's drunk and can't spell through. and they all head back to the hotel, which Sheree is sadly disappointed that her large room and her prize ended up being just a regular room like everyone else got. And Marlo comes with her entire staff, which is like, I mean, I get it. Maybe, again, I'm not in that tax bracket yet. You know, when I get there, emphasis on when, maybe I'll be traveling with all my entire staff. But it's like, girl, you couldn't do your own hair and makeup in that small Hilton room? Just saying. But the ladies start getting ready for this charity event that Kenya is, you know, attending later on this evening, and she's invited everyone. Now again, like I stated, it is historically known with the Real Housewives of Atlanta that all these women go to things late. So Kenya gave them a time of like, hey, you got to be ready by 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock hits and everyone's late with the exception of Monietta, Sheree, and I believe Courtney. For the most part, everyone's late. Now, Monietta did arrive on time, but Kenya did not approve of her outfit. If I'm not mistaken, I don't believe Kenya told anyone that this fundraiser was happening and how they had to pack and dress. So, you know, to say, oh, you got to change, it's like, you know, you should have let her know ahead of time. But I get it. If you thought, emphasis on thought, that this was supposed to be some classy red carpet event and she came down there like she was about ready to go to the club, I could understand that. So Monietta goes back upstairs to change. Kenya and Sheree and Courtney are waiting in the Sprinter van, and it gets to the point where you're like, Kenya's like, I'm gone. We leaving. I don't care. Leave everyone. Which, with the exception of Monietta, I understand why she left. Because again, this group is historically known for being late. So if you are supposed to be there at a certain time and you told the group, hey, we gotta go at this time, I gotta be there, and people are still playing around, I'd have been like, group text, I am leaving. This is the address. I'll see y'all when y'all get there, period. Like, that's just where I'm at in my life. It's like, look, I'm gone. I'm gone. Like, I will try to wait for you, but again, this group, they could drag their feet, getting ready, looking cute, and I get it. They always look good, but I can understand where Kenya's like, I'm out of here. So she leaves. Her, Sheree, and Courtney arrive, and for all that hooping and hollering about, oh, Monietta, you won't dress appropriately, Monietta got there at the same time that Kenya and the rest of the girls did, and they walked in there, and this event had folks in jeans. People's looking real casual at this event. So all this hooping and hollering about, oh, Monietta, you gotta change, she was dressed fine. And they get there, and a lot of people are taking pictures of them, or can I take pictures of you, and filming them. And it was just very interesting because I guess Kenya hyped this event up about, oh, this is supposed to be this very elegant, high class event, and it was a fundraiser. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say that it wasn't on par with some fundraisers, but it just didn't seem like the fundraisers that maybe she's used to. Like, I feel like the fundraiser that her and Mark did years back, like in her mind, she hyped it up as like that type of fundraiser, when it was really just like a real community fundraiser. And they seem to be the most well-known people. They seem to be the main celebrities of the fundraiser. The way that she hyped it up, it was like you'd have thought it was going to be other celebrities there, and from the looks of it, they were the celebrities of the event, which triggered people to take pictures. And I guess the people who were hosting the fundraiser were kind of getting tired of all of the other folks in the group giving all their attention to Kenya and the rest of her group, and they asked them to leave, which I thought that was rude, because I'm like, if you invited Kenya Moore, what did you expect? Like, even if Kenya didn't come with the rest of the ladies, like, Kenya Moore is a big deal. She's a big name. So even if she walked in there by herself, people still would have been stopping to take her picture. So I didn't understand that at all. I know that when Marlo and Sonya eventually arrived, Marlo being the type of person that she is, she wanted to be known that she was upset that she was left, and so she ordered a bottle with sparklers and stuff like that. And the host of the event said, you know, there was just too much attention and that was too much. But even still, it's just like, I don't know. I did think that was rude on the host of the event to ask the ladies to leave. It didn't seem appropriate whatsoever. Now, once the ladies were kicked out of the event because of the rude host, yes, I'm saying the rude host, they went back to the hotel room and Kenya bid everyone a farewell good night and chucked up the deuces and went to bed. And the women were upset. They felt like, you know, this is a girls trip. We don't know what's going on. Like, why she go to bed? And they decided they were going to go up to the room and ask her to come out. Now, again, been watching the show for a while. So if you watch the show for seasons, you know that Kenya is infamous for rolling out early and going to bed, especially once she had her daughter Brooklyn. Like, once Brooklyn came in the picture, Kenya was very much like, I'm bringing Brooklyn with me, and while y'all at some point in the night, I'm going to break off and go be with my child. That has been Kenya since she had baby Brooklyn. So this is not out of the norm of how Kenya Moore conducts herself on these trips. It could be annoying, I guess, on a girls trip, because again, it's a girls trip. You think you're gonna be Kenya hanging out with your girls and one of your girls is in the bed, especially the one girl that went to bed is the host of the trip. So I can see where the frustration is, but again, if you've watched the show long enough and if you know Kenya well enough, you know that this is not out of the norm. So they all go and confront her, and of course leave it to Marlo to be the extra one, the dramatic one. And I hate to keep using this word. I don't like to place this term on people, especially black and brown people, but just being aggressive, knocking on the door, beating on the door, trying to get Kenya's attention. And she got her attention because Kenya bucked up and let that Detroit come out and be like, yo, why are you beating on my door? Like, why are you beating on my door? Leave me alone, my child's in here. Now, I agree with all the other women. As soon as Kenya said her daughter was in there, cease to stop, keep it moving. But of course, Marlo, again, something in her is like, she just doesn't once she gets worked up, she doesn't think rationally and logically. It's like, I'm worked up, I'm upset, you gonna listen to me and why I'm upset. And Marlo just kept beating this thing like it was a dead horse. Like, leave a woman alone. One, all y'all were out of line. If the woman said she was going to bed, and if you know her well enough and long enough, you know she going to bed, leave her alone. Like, again, I would have been upset, but I'd have been like, look, all of us still awake, let's go hit the streets. Like, one person ain't gonna stop this whole show. So I would have just been like, look, I'm out. And then the next day I'd have called the person out. But to go beat on someone's door is just like really extra. And then to beat on her door and allow one person to go beat on her door the way that Marlo was, and then, oh, her child's there and Marlo's still like doing the most. It was unnecessary. It was uncalled for. And I think that's the reason why I feel like it's so hard for some of the women, especially Candy and Kenya, to really be cool with Marlo, because it's like she just doesn't know boundaries. She doesn't know when not to cross that line. And I felt like Marlo crossed the line and it was inappropriate. So that's how the episode ended, y'all. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of Cocktails and Convo. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you like, comment, and below. Let me know what you thought about the episode. Yes, if you enjoyed the cocktail, please comment below that you made the cocktail and let me know what you think about it. If you have a different view or opinion on this episode, let me know. If I missed something, y'all, if I missed something, please let me know below. Again, like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you in the next video below.